If you got thrown into a reformation school with bullies, what would you do? You would have to become a dog, get tossed around, and make tricked up alliances just to survive the day. Stick around, I'm gonna break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the twisted schoolmasters in evil or life. This dude has no idea that his peaceful life is about to end forever. Hibiki here is a youth with a gaming addiction, but when he wakes up from sleep, he finds himself in a strange room. He's not alone. These unfortunate kids are stuck with him. Hibiki's doofus brain makes him think that he's been transported into a game world, but reality is sometimes much worse. A few minutes later, these buff-looking guys show up, and Hibiki thinks they're the monsters that his game crew has to fight. And then this beautiful woman shows up and welcomes them to the Elite Re-Education Academy. She calls them trash and promises to re-engineer them before sending them back into society. But she doesn't know that these students will lead to the end of her school. She introduces herself as Jean, the headmistress of the school. But the new students aren't buying it. They know it's a rehab facility for internet addicts. They start protesting because they want to leave. And that's when they learn the first rule of ERA. They can't talk back to their teachers. Buff dude here, whose real name is Shin, goes close to one of them and punches the you-know-what out of him. And then he gives him a proper whooping and helps him understand his place in the food chain. So we just got transported into a school we know nothing about, and that's why these dudes are caught lacking. The first mistake, which you should not make if you find yourself in a similar situation, is that they went in blind. Hibiki, for instance, has been an internet addict for a long time, but being an internet addict for a long time means that in addition to whatever negative vices he may have engaged in, he also has access to the benefits the internet offers. Global communication, access to information, e-commerce, and entertainment. Use these tools to his advantage, I say. He could have found out about ERA online and thought up a counter for if he ever got caught. I mean, he loves his internet life, right? So why doesn't he think of ways to protect it? With the number of students within the school, it is impossible for the outside world to know about it, because the new students already know about the kind of place they're in, and that would have better helped them get ready for it. Well, assuming they were still brought here. But that's not all. This unfortunate dude got beaten up because he did the next thing you should never do. He spoke without understanding the rankings and disrespected the order. When in Rome, do like Romans do. But of course, you can't behave like them without knowing how they behave. So if we're in their shoes, just shut up and listen to whatever they have to say. We don't know where we are. We can't even escape yet, even if we want to. That's why you gotta prioritize surviving, which means shut up and listen for now. After the beating, Shin takes the roll call and informs Hibiki that he was sent to ERA by his mother's request, and he's not getting out until he turns 18. Meanwhile, on the school's roof, this purple-headed student recites Hibiki's data like he stole the file, and while Hibiki doesn't know it, he's going to get manipulated very soon. But for now, he gets beat up for stealing some glances at the proprietor's melons, if you know what I mean. It's not going to be the last time his pervy nature gets him in trouble. As soon as the officers lets them go, Hibiki decides to run away. He climbs to the rooftop to get a layout of the school, but his hope turns to despair because the school is built like a Russian prison. So he does the next thing, kicking his own bucket because he thought that was the right choice. But before Hibiki can plunge to his doom, purple hair guy shows up and convinces him to live as his slave, because if he does, all his problems will go away. Hibiki yields, and while on the roof, he spots his old school middle crush, Shiori, and she's hotter than ever. Before they leave, purple hair introduces himself as Shin and promises Hibiki that he can get any girl on campus, including Shiori. Later, they head down together, but they immediately run into the cops searching for Hibiki, and that's when Shin works his magic. He convinces the cops that Hibiki got lost searching for the bathroom. He was just helping him get down. The officers buy it, and so Hibiki gets off with just a scolding, and he starts to see Shin as his new savior. That's why he thinks that because Shin has promised him, he's gonna have his way with Shiori too. After leaving the cops, they head into the field immediately, and Shin walks up to this big dude named Wudo, the student disciplinarian, and whispers something into his ear. Immediately, Wudo walks up to this innocent cutie and starts fumbling from in between her melons. He pulls out a phone because mobile devices are banned in school. Even after getting the phone, Wudo still strips the girl because he's a douche. Luckily, Shiori shows up with a knife and ends that show by threatening Wudo. Wudo's underlings attack her, but Shiori's pretty cool, so she brushes them off. When one of them throws a brick at her, Hibiki steps in like a stud and lets the brick land on his face. Once the commotion is over, she invites Hibiki to come with her for some first aid. This is all going according to Shin's plan. Shiori takes Hibiki to a secluded place and tends to his wounds while she notices that his third leg is on the move, and she nearly cuts it off for good. Immediately, all his good work goes to poop because she sees him only as a twisted perv just like all the other men. Instead, Shiori goes to the girl she just saved and proposes a trade because like every internet-starved freak in the school, she also needs a phone. The girl refuses, and Hibiki tries to talk Shiori out of being mean, but instead she throws a knife at him, and that's when Shin shows up holding a a phone of his own. He proposes a trade with Shiori, but to get the phone, she has to sleep with Hibiki first. But the girl Hiyori saved jumps the gun and moves on Hibiki anyways because she wants her phone back. Hibiki agrees to get down and dirty, but Shin isn't having it. He already knows everything about the girl Hibiki saved. He calls her June and recites her life history, and that's when she tries to attack him. But Shiori dismisses her by slashing her dress with a knife. Once she's gone, Shiori locks in and agrees to Shin's demand. However, every time she gets close to Hibiki, she ends up vomiting because he's gross. Well, okay, I'm kidding. Shiori has a condition, but we're soon gonna figure out what it is. Because Hibiki is such a simp, he tries to, you know what, and uses as proof for Shin that he's not a man. It works, or that's what they think, because after their little ploy, Shin gives Shiori the phone and congratulates Hibiki on becoming a man, but once again, it's all a part of the master plan. When Hibiki speaks out of turn, Shin grabs him by the neck and lifts him to remind him who's the boss. But Hibiki is love drunk on Shiori, so he revolts against Shin and runs off, but even this is part of Shin's expectation. He gets to his hostel and gets a celebratory welcome from his roommates, but once the hostel guide leaves him, they flip the script and make Hibiki the errand boy by sending him to fetch their lunch. When he gets back with the same bland food, they reveal their true colors. Everyone thought he was Shin's lackey, and so he would have access to the good stuff like meat and tasty meals. But that's when Hibiki informs them that he was dumb enough to run away from Shin. They decide to attack him for his stupidity, but they're too weak and starved to do anything, so instead they make Hibiki think he has the powers because they trip and fall every time he raises his hands. Hibiki thinks he has acquired main character status, so he tries to break down the wall and go save Shiori, but he ends up bruising his hand. When he sees how slim his roommates are, he rushes to the hostel's rep room to make a complaint, but when he tries to lecture the dude, he gets scolding of his life and rushes to the field just before the lectures start. No, amateur. It's obvious Hibiki is a kid and doesn't have a lot of experience in the real world because no one storms off into a corrupt person's office and demands a change without holding some form of leverage over them. Let me explain. Hibiki's first mistake is that he does not understand the power dichotomy of the institution he just joined. For instance, in the Japanese Navy, you have top ranks like admirals, vice admirals, rear admirals. So before we run all the way down to the base, after almost 10 ranks, we arrive at Seaman, Apprentice, and Seaman Recruit. What Hibiki just did is equivalent to, well, a Seaman challenging a rear admiral and commanding them to change his treatment of other seaman recruits. That's dumb. If we're in his shoes, we need to do things differently. Law 1 of the 48 Laws of Power demands that we never outshine the master, so we have to work from the shadows by purposely taking off the hostile master to get him to slip up and show his true colors in front of the superiors. Together with this, we would drop any anonymous tags in different handwritings at different locations for the proprietor and other officials to see. With time, the pressure becomes too much, and one superior officer would take up the matter. Now, I know your eyes are rolling at the audacity of hope and how long it'll take to resolve the issue. Well, that's why there's a much simpler way. The hostel guard stays within the hostel, and that's where all the students are as well. And that's why we all really need to do is just stand up for ourselves by ganging up on and attacking the hotel master. There's no way on God's green earth that with 60 to 70% of the hostel attacking, he will not feel the brunt. And before you mention that we would get punished by other officers, it doesn't matter. We're sending a simple message that we're not to be messed with, and if anybody messes with us, they get to enjoy whatever repercussions they face from us or their unruly behavior. And the best part, every officer will get the message. So even if they change the hostile master, the effect doesn't change. Luckily, Hibiki arrives just before his homeroom teacher Shin shows up, and immediately Shin punishes the class rep for speaking improperly, and while he's serving his punishment, Shin gets the rest of the class the rules. After the address, they start their stamina training. After multiple harsh exercises, the students start failing one after another, but after Hibiki turns on main character mode and doesn't fall, he takes a step further by trying to stop Shin from punishing the weak students, but he gets a first-hand seat to his own butt whooping, and that's after he makes the mistake of giving Shin a nosebleed. Hibiki tries to start a revolt, but they all have been so broken, so instead they accept Shin's punishment and leave Hibiki feeling sorry for himself. Luckily, Shiori shows up and Hibiki thinks she's there to support him, but no, she just takes up the beating from where Shin left off and forces him to bow his head and apologize. But Hibiki isn't having it, and that's why he gets Shiori into serious trouble. He throws a tantrum about being right and how he's not afraid of death and even dares Inspector Shin to try and kill him. Shiori tries to hold him back, but as he pushes her off, the phone in her pocket falls, and that makes Shin forget about Hibiki and turns all of his attention to Shiori. Now, Shin is a very twisted human being for those of you that don't know. So instead of punishing Hibiki for his own sins, he decides to punish the very people Hibiki was trying to protect. Now, Hibiki revolts and all, but when it doesn't work, he breaks out and apologizes for being a deviant. Meanwhile, Shiori gets a beating from the girls in her class for holding a phone under Shin's supervision. After the beatdown, Shiori gets demoted from student council president to just another regular bum. It's all Hibiki's fault. Shiori warns him never to talk to her again. Shin shows up and catches Hibiki being pathetic as usual, but he doesn't offer him any real solace. And what he doesn't know is that this will change Hibiki forever. Hibiki even even begs to become Shin's dog, but Shin tells him he lost that privilege. Instead, he tells Hibiki that to be accepted once again, he must fulfill 3 conditions, including rising to the top of his class and winning Wudo's position. Hibiki agrees and rushes back to his place before announcing out of the blue to the people who were planning on beating him up that he is their new leader, but he changes their mind in a second by showing them the food they only see in dreams. Doesn't take much convincing anyways, so they immediately agree. After that, he makes a plan with them and they go to attack Wudo. Wudo gets mad and attacks them with his gang, but despite his looks, Hibiki is actually an elite distance runner, so he gives them the slip and takes them out slowly after separating them from their team. And Hibiki continues to give him the slip until he enters his hostel. Wudo in his anger chases him down, and as soon as he enters, the hostel commander shuts the door, leaving Wudo's lackeys outside. Wudo tries to protest, but that's when he learns he's fallen into a trap because it is lights out. Except he's confident he can handle Hibiki on his own, but that's only because he doesn't know the extent of the trap set for him, because while his lackeys are outside, Hibiki's hostel mates and new comrades are all waiting. By the power of unity, they beat the living daylights out of Wudo while his lackeys watch helplessly from the outside. The next day, Hibiki turns in a bunch of phones recovered from Wudo and reports everything to Shin. And Shin isn't having it, so he gives Wudo another proper beating, and when he's done, he sends Wudo into solitary and congratulates Hibiki for being a well-behaved student. But when he gets back to the proprietor's office, he finds a couple reporting their child for escaping the school. And when they leave, the proprietor punishes Shin for letting the child escape in the first place, and while proprietor Jin gets a kick from whipping Shin, they have no idea that someone is watching them from the outside, and it's this guy named Ryo. Turns out Ryo has been working with Wudo to smuggle phones in the school, but now that he's been discovered, Ryo denies him and leaves him to rot after rough handling him for a bit. When they link up again, Shin praises Hibiki for doing as he was instructed and accepts him as his teammate again. He takes him to his room, which is just as good as living in his own house because he has a TV and everything that you would need to live in your own house. They talk for a bit and Shin informs Hibiki of the next stage. They need to take care of Class 6 and all the other classmates where the illegal phone business is thriving. Shin promises to help Hibiki where he can, but he also informs Hibiki that no one can get him to the top of the school apart from himself. Meanwhile, Shiori has a run-in with this perverted girl and her, well, tough younger sister. The duo tests her skills and tries to recruit her. At first, she refuses, but when they throw in a little bit of blackmail and a bit of personal history, she agrees to work with them. However, while she's sparring for her life, Hibiki returns to his hostel and tries to rile up his guys to fight with him again. But they've had enough. They refuse to work with him, and Hibiki gets so mad that he decides to do all the work by himself. And while he's all riled up, Shin got attacked by Ryo because Ryo was just trying to get Jun's phone back. But luckily for him though, Shin's bodyguard was close by, so he sends Ryo flying while trying to protect Shin. Immediately following Shin's instructions, Hibiki walks directly into a trap. He heads down to a location, and when he arrives, he gets surrounded by some goons. But even while surrounded, Hibiki continues to dish out threats, like Steph serving 3-pointers. When they don't get the memo, Hibiki starts beating himself up. And at first it looks like entertainment to the goons until Hibiki throws himself to the ground and starts crying out. And that's when the boys realize they've been set up. They turn around and run face first into Head Inspector Shin's hard chest. Shin immediately grabs the ringleader and punishes the other members for 1 day without food. But when he leaves, Hibiki invokes the art of main character mode and convinces the rest of the team to work with him. Hibiki informs his new gang members they're going after Class 6 next, but they immediately advise him to no and start an information sharing session with him. By the time the session is over, Hibiki realizes he's been set up by Shin once again, and to worsen his fate, Shiori and her new gang show up to get a phone from the goons, and that's why they get disappointed to see Hibiki leading them. Things get heated and the goons get a thrashing from Shiori's new gang, but just when they're about to attack Hibiki, Shin shows up like a true mastermind. He tries to defuse the situation, but when it doesn't work, he instructs Hibiki to run. The girls chase them all the way to the men's bathroom, but they don't realize that this is all a part of Shin's plan as well. Inside, a group of boys, including Class 6's leader, called Yo, are waiting for them. Yo disposes the entire gang in less than a minute and makes the strongest girls in school look like weaklings. But when Hibiki learns that Class 6 has joined Shin's banner, he realizes that Shin has swindled him once again. But Shin spins the script and says Hibiki has disappointed him by disobeying the instruction he was given. So instead, he gives him one last chance to stay on the winning team by stripping the girls naked and taking videos to be used for blackmail in the event of any funny business. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, Hibiki doesn't have the stones to do it, so instead he tries to help Shiori run away. The girls all get caught by an instructor working with Shin, and when Hibiki tries to explain that Shin is the bad guy, Shin calls him a traitor. So the inspector searches for him, and when the phone is found, he gets thrown into solitary confinement for 2 weeks. Well, Hibiki takes being a simp and a doofus to a whole new level, because he's thrown away every lifeline that Shin has handed him, and proved that he really doesn't care a bit for himself, or getting out of the situation unscathed. So the first thing and most easiest and unfortunate option is that you strip the girls. Now, before you think it's evil, this is probably the most viable solution. In this way, the only people that ever really get to see them are the men in the room, most of which really don't give a frick about melons right now. And for the video, the most important fact to keep in mind is that Hibiki is possession of 2 phones. So instead of expending his energy fighting with a group he obviously can't beat, he could have used eye signals, like he signaled the girls to run away. But this time, it would be just to create commotion once he's done taking the video. In the midst of the chaos, we would employ a little sleight of hand and switch the phones. That way, even though they get a phone, we leave with the video and the girls unscathed. You see what I'm saying? Now, even if that doesn't work, the next best option would be for Hibiki to cause a distraction himself. Shin is counting on the evidence that he would get from the video. However, he most likely had only 1 phone near him. That means that's a perfect distraction for Hibiki to run away as soon as he gets the phone to take the video. Now, we've seen how much of an elite sprinter and endurance runner surprisingly Hibiki is, so he would have no trouble putting some distance between himself and the chasers. And with that, Shin's send some heavy hitters to get him and grab him, and the girls would have a chance to run away without getting caught. Now, of course, this all could be avoided if they had the good sense to not run into an all-boys dormitory. For a class student like Shiori, she really walked into this one, and that is why it's not good to be Shiori right now. Now, what they don't know is that instead of cracking his mind, Hibiki is like a ninja from Hidden Leaf. They never duck a fade. In solitude, Hibiki goes soul-searching because the good boy isn't working for him. So he becomes a ruthless monster like everybody else, and he finally realizes that strength is right in this twisted school. So instead of letting his mind go crazy, he locks in and gets into training. 2 weeks later, Hibiki returns a changed man. As soon as he leaves solitary, he gets an opportunity. Shiori over here and Nerd-kun get bullied by the Sora bunch, so Hibiki shows up and tells the bullies to back off. Instead, they try to gang up on him, but he pulls the Uno reverse card and takes them out one by one, using every dirty trick in the book, from breaking knees to stomping on family jewels, anything to get the job done. And that's when they realize our boy's serious, so they back off. But when Shorty takes him up to the medical room, she tries to give him a little more than medicine, but her fun gets spoiled by Shiori and her sister. Later, Hibiki uses his talking abilities to worm his way into Shion's heart again. Before he can perfect his talk, the girls' kung fu team shows up and requests a duel. It only takes a minute to wipe the floor with the faces of the cocky boys who thought they could win against trained girls without any martial arts training. And when they're done losing, Hibiki decides to join the fray. Unknowns to everybody, he struck a deal with the girls' leader that if he wins, they will work for him. The fight starts between Hibiki and the girls' best fighter, Hoku. Hibiki spends the next 5 minutes taking serious punishment. As soon as Hoku starts getting tired, he seizes the opportunity to grab her and lock her into a submission hold. Hoku realizes she's about to pass out, so she taps, and everybody's impressed, but he's not done yet. After witnessing his bout, the instructor of class 6 shows up with the strongest thud and challenges Hibiki to another battle. Now, Hibiki knows he's been set up, but he uses his brain. Hibiki argues that going into a brawl with a fully trained martial artist is an unfair battle, so he proposes a battle of the basics, in this case, standing at attention. Both instructors agree and the students start. Although Yo is a badass, Hibiki has grit. He refuses to go down. 3 hours go by, and not wanting to lose face by losing, the instructors decide to sell it as a draw. But as Hibiki heads back to the hostel assisted by Nerd, he realizes the battle is not over. As soon as they arrive, he asks Nerd to get 2 buckets, one hot and one cold. Immediately, Yo shows up to teach him a lesson and pours 2 buckets of water on him, sapping all the energy he had left. Now, of course, Hibiki is unforgiving, so he uses the opportunity to beat the living daylights out of Yo. And while Yo's goons head to Hibiki's room to watch Yo thrash up Hibiki, that's when they meet a sight they just can't explain. Hibiki throws Yo out of the room and stomps him in the face while Nerd tries to hold him off. When they see this, the new students have a change of heart and decide to follow Hibiki. And when they ask about how they're supposed to fight against stronger classes, he gives them a demonstration by thrashing Yo so badly with a table leg that the animators decided to not show it on screen. Holy frick. Now, he beats them so bad he has nightmares about beating people up. When he wakes up, students line in front of him and swear they're fealty. While all this is going on, Hibiki ignores them because he's no longer about that loyalty thing, and he learns that Shin hasn't been seen for a while. Meanwhile, a new head instructor shows up and punches the living daylights out of instructor Shion, throwing a wrench into his plans. However, the instructors are not the only ones cooking. Shiori and her sister gather in a room. Shiori proves how much of a computer nerd she is by creating her own local area network, and thanks to it, as soon as they get their hands on a phone, they can call anyone anywhere. However, Shiori feels like something's off, so she decides to investigate June, and she leaves just as Hibiki shows up, but he continues his plan with Shorty and her sister, but nobody knows that they're running away because of her trauma. Turns out our girl was always an honor student and got thrown into the school by a perverted uncle who stole her family's wealth after her parents' death and molested her as payment for treating her brother with Shiori's family's original wealth. That's why she kept vomiting when Hibiki tried to get close to her early on. Together, Hibiki and the sisters head down to Shin's room. But surprise, the place is upside down. Hibiki finds chocolates and drugs. When he sees the drugs, he realizes that Shin has been taking life support medicine and fears that Shin is already dead. Shiori finds June, but June drops her innocent girl act and tells Shiori to obey her every demand, and she will get released from the school within 2 days. Hibiki takes matters into his own hands and calls Nerd-kun and asks how he managed to escape escape from the twisted school. Nerd informs him that purple hair guy gave him a map of the sewers and instructed him to make a post about everything going on in the school when he gets out. But the post he made was taken down almost as soon as it went up, and his parents returned him to the school because they thought he had not changed. Well, apparently it looks like our boy's a complete novice in making posts go viral. From speaking, it's obvious that Nerd Boy here thought getting the word out was making a post on your WhatsApp status or TikTok and hoping it goes viral. But a lot more goes into making posts viral. First off, after getting out, he should have known he was not in a hurry. His parents sent him to the school to be altered. So for the first 2 weeks, he should have played the role of a meek, innocent, non-internet loving kid. While his parents are busy getting impressed with his new behavior, he should sneak out and meet with his friends from before. Everybody knows somebody, and so he would leverage his old nerd gang to find a thorough hacker who can hack a global internet platform like CNN and post the news there on a given date. Before the agreed date, all his friends would agree on a different version of the same story to basically make the report multidimensional and give it more weight. On the agreed date, everybody posts at the same time. The news would not be traceable to one source, while the police, given the widespread nature of the report, would have no choice but to look into the gravity of the situation by going to investigate the school. And in this case, he doesn't have to have friends because he's a recluse. He doesn't need to have friends. If we're in his shoes, we would go to school every day with a mission to study the algorithm and figure out how to make posts viral, together with making our own research, and we would find influencers on whatever platform we find. And last, we would also join different videos from the internet to create an emotional storyline of abuse that sells to the public the dangers and evils of the era school. And once the video is ready, we would make a deal with the influencers so they can take all the profits from a very viral story. They just need to get the word out. With that, we will have saved the rest of the students and succeeded in directing the floodlights on the era school. The next day, the rest of the classes are impressed to find class 4 in total sync. Hibiki is their new leader, but to his surprise, the new instructor shows up claiming he suspended Shion for dereliction of duty. He gives them new rules that punish everybody if one person fails. When one dude fails, he teases the dude and commands him to get back on his feet if he doesn't want the rest of his mates to be punished. And that's when Hibiki steps up and takes on the brunt of the punishment. New instructor Hyo gives him a chance to change his mind, but he insists on bearing whatever the punishment it is by himself. Hyo agrees and takes Hibiki with him, while releasing everybody else to sit. When they get to their destination, he pours a cup of tea for Hibiki. Hyo informs Hibiki that he is the new most important person in the school because students and instructors alike are talking about him. So he proposes to Hibiki that he should be the new school president. Hibiki hesitates to accept, so he decides to give him some incentive. So Hyo takes Hibiki to the dungeons, and that's when he finds the dear old Shiori bruised, battered, clothing torn, and locked up. He pretends to be happy to see her there and thanks Hiyori for the opportunity to have Shiori kneel and beg him for help. After, Hiyori gives him an assignment to find a missing phone, but Hibiki already knows that the phone was in Shin's room. Less than a day later, he returns the missing phone to Hyo, sealing his faithfulness to Hyo. And with that, Hyo permits Hibiki to decide what he wanted to do with Shiori. Despite becoming a stud, he likes her, so he carries Shiori all the way from the dangers to her hostel. The next day, Shin shows up in his hiding place with a revenge mission on his mind. Meanwhile, Hibiki, Shorty, and Nerd and the rest of the gang already are preparing their own plan. The instructors announce Hibiki as the new disciplinary officer, and later Hibiki stops by Hyo's office, and that's when Hyo asks for his help in finding the missing Shin. But when Hibiki finds his roommates thugging it out, he scolds them because he doesn't want to be a total douche like his predecessors. With the aid of his new allies, he spreads news all over the internet, with Shorty as the brains behind the word getting out. News outlets catch wind of the juicy story, and they swarm the school to get the scoop. Turns out, despite his tired demeanor, Hibiki was able to ship Shiori and the rest of his crew out of the school, with Nerd-kun leading them through the dungeons. And as soon as they got Shiori out to a hospital, they started to work on getting the news out for good. With reporters at their gates, instructors try to do damage control, but the new disciplinary officer has everybody else on his side already and convinces them to stay in their hostels. When Hyo tries to join the crew of the gate to prevent more commotion, he gets blocked by Hibiki with annoying questions until he can't take it anymore. So he attacks Hibiki and they start sparring, but Hibiki's fine by taking a few hits. Since his plan was to stall Hyo anyways, he successfully stalls until instructor Shion returns to handle the business. And this time it's not a one-sided fight. Shion decides to not hold back and gives Hyo the beating of his life. At the same time, Hyo tries to convince himself that Shion and Hibiki would lose because the police won't come, but Shin has that covered, as if on impeccable timing. He sets the room on fire just in time to cause further panic and make the journalists call the cops. To save his savior and first friend in era, Hibiki throws himself into the fire till he gets to the rooftop where Shin is seated all by himself. Together they watch the police arrive to make the arrests of all the instructors and the proprietor of the school.